it's a slightly negative day on the all share. Perhaps nothing to write home about or nothing to cry about really on that front. But the likes of Mediclinic seeing a bit of a snag today with regards to its market movement. So perhaps the Rand as well playing some of its tricks as well with regards to how things are faring on the local bourse. So around 1380 or so against the US dollar. So we'll unpack exactly what's happening on that front. The global sentiment itself may indeed be impacting exactly how South Africa is faring at the moment. But for now, let's check in on how those European and local markets are faring. Well, as you can see, a slightly negative tinge to the local market and even global markets as well, seeing a tinge of negativity there. But let's unpack all of that movement now. Maudi Lentsoane from Lehomo Capital joining us now today. Maudi, thank you so much for the time, but it's a slight tinge of negativity there. Nothing to worry about, really. There's been a slightly positive sentiment to the year, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think we started the year fairly positive and on the back of a number of positive developments, really. It's good to see that China and the US are back in the same room talking about how to resolve the trade tension that was there for the larger part of last year. We haven't got anything out as yet, despite the fact that some few statements and reports out that they are progressing very well, and some few tweets from Donald Trump saying, you know, they're developing very well, they're going very well. So we are hoping that something tangible will come out of this. And I think that will certainly propel the markets to the highs, and certainly would be very positive for the markets. But so far, there's still no details. You've still got a number of obviously sensitive areas, the Brexit related, sensitive issues there. May under a lot of pressure. Yeah. We saw her losing the vote yesterday. Now there's a big vote coming through on Tuesday, which also says that she will have 3 days to now work out Plan B. So a number of negative developments there. You also had some negative data coming out of China. So there are a mixture of positives and negatives. I think for the time being, all eyes on the Brexit, on the trade talks to see exactly what's going to come out of that.
I mean, at least get one thing out the way, yes. Right? If we were to talk about the local market, last year was a torrid one. Overall, losing over 14% or so just for the JSE on its own. A lot of the companies going down by double digits or so. One would say that they are primed to tick up for 2019. But is that really the case, considering that post the World War, this is possibly the longest bull run we've had in quite some time, around 10 years or so? Would we still expect to see the market head higher this year, or is there perhaps some negativity still lodged into it for the remainder of 2019?
Yeah, look, there is a large expectation that after a very dismal 2018, this year will certainly be positive. But I think there's still a number of things that could go wrong. For example, if we have trade talks which then collapses and we then embark in a full-fledged trade war, that will certainly be very negative, especially for emerging markets. The other negative that might come up, and it's the US economy. If we are getting the sense that there is some weaknesses in certain area, but when you look at the job numbers, they were very strong. Yeah. And I think if we continue to see a very strong US economy and maybe the Fed continuing to hike at an aggressive pace, that will certainly also shift the focus for emerging markets. I think that would definitely be very negative for the emerging markets countries. So I think there's a lot of permutations and a lot of things that could still go wrong, but the general expectation is that this year should be much better than last year.
If you were to pick a sector then, which one would that be?
I would certainly say, I think the consumer, the retail sectors, the banking sectors, for me, those are some of the areas where I'm looking at. I am more South African Inc., the companies that are doing more in South Africa, because I think, we expect a turnaround, particularly in our GDP. I don't expect the same performance that we registered last year, even though there's already revisions, for example, from the World Bank that we will not.
1.3% also doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good, but there's certainly certain areas, especially in the retail sector, where I think, and the banking sector, where I think there performance will be much better than last year. There are some retailers that have just been hammered, the likes of ShopRite, the likes of Woolies. Those are the ones that are, those are the counters that I'm certainly looking at with keen interest to see whether they won't pick up this year.
Yeah. Well, look, National Treasury has their estimated around 1.9% for growth in 2019. The Reserve Bank has 1.7%, a little bit more modest there. The World Bank at 1.3%. A few issues and a few concerns will certainly be in play as well, considering that it's a politically driven year with those elections as well in May, right? So political stability is going to be quite keen. I wanted to chat very quickly about that oil price as well.
Yes.
It hovered really quickly towards $60 a barrel and perhaps a few fears. But is that something we should be worried about, really?
Look, I think for us, the oil price is a stimulus. The weaker the oil price at these sort of levels is a very good stimulus for our economy. It does impact negatively on your trading partners, the likes of Nigeria, especially the oil-producing nations. It does impact them negatively. So if they start, weakening severely, then it could actually have a negative impact towards South Africa. But I think so far, it's a positive for us to have oil price at least stabilizing around these sort of levels, because it means petrol price is cheaper and therefore there's more money into the consumer's pocket. So I think for me, this is where, as an economy, we would like to see the oil price settles.
Some say it could weaken as much as 13% or strengthen as much as 8%. The South African rand now at 13.87. Where do you stand?
Look, I think, as I said, there's a number of domestic factors that could drive the rand. And of course, there's a number of external factors that could also push the rand. So from a domestic point of view, which is something that we have control over, it's unfortunately the election year. There's going to be a lot of electioneering. We're talking about the land issue as well, which is a very sensitive topic, one that has to be settled and treated delicately, and we need to be able to resolve it amicably without a lot of tension, because I think that could also change the perception and start impacting on investor confidence, and which as a result will then have a negative impact on the rand. But I think if we handle those issues correctly, we should have a further strengthening of the rand from here.
Maudi Lentsoane, I appreciate your time, but pretty much a flat stance, as you can see, with the slight negative tinge there for the JSE All Share. The likes of Mediclinic and Aspen, the healthcare brand, seemingly going down today and not having the best of days. Perhaps it'll begin to pick up as we head towards the close of trade today around 5 p.m. We'll march into that and see exactly how things fare. But for now, that's how the buck stops. Lihumo Capital's Maudi Lentsoane, of course, having joined us for that market report.